Greetings, Kerbonauts. This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and this is episode number 32 of the Gateway Project. And in this episode, we need to dock the Leonardo permanently onto the station, as well as launch the ELC-4. That's, remember, an express logistics carrier. We're going to take a little look at past events, going back further in history than we've ever looked before. But first, we have to start off by helping out those guys that are up on the Minmus space station by getting them home. And right now, Jebediah needs to go out there and make sure that the return capsule has enough life support in it. Initially, I didn't notice that there were some canisters back here that have some life support already. I went and grabbed a new one and then got back here and went, oh look, there's already 3 canisters here. Well, I've got it carried already, so I'll just stick it in here with the others, but I'll go back inside and I'll take some of the life support out of those canisters. Since I don't need that much to get home, we'll use the TAC fuel balancer to transfer some of that life support out, and then we'll decouple that capsule so that it can go home as the Hydra crew carrier, of course. Now, the Kerbals going home, of course, are just the guys who were down on the station. They're going to take the capsule that Jebediah used to get up here in the first place, because that's the older one. Also, the one that Bill came up here in, it has landing legs. So just in case Jeb or anyone on the station wants to go down to the surface, they can use that one and they can land with it. And we'll take this back with just about 200 Delta V to go before we're on our way home. We begin our burn. We'll just bring our flight's periapsis down into the atmosphere of Kerbin, and we'll be home in just a couple seconds. Well, it's a couple seconds for you, and for the Kerbonauts in the capsule, it's a day or two to get home. After Bill and his crew make it back, and don't worry about that life support warning, we actually still have over a day left, and we don't have nearly a day before we get home, so we had plenty left over. When they get home, I think Bill's going to go on a vacation. He's going to take a little break from all of this, and then when he comes back, he's going to have his new plan for his requirement for staying in the project, which we discussed last time was going to be a little bit more about redundancy. So we are definitely starting to heat up there. We'll decouple that propulsion section there from the STHI mod, let that go and explode, and then start thinking about how next up we need to launch our Leonardo and permanently dock it to the station. That was sent up in February of 2011, and it went home and the shuttle went home in March, leaving behind the Leonardo docked to that nadir side of the Unity module. It went up on STS-133 Discovery. It actually launched originally on Discovery and then came up for its very last time on Discovery as well. It was the 39th launch of Discovery and Discovery's last flight entirely. It was originally scheduled to go actually in September of 2010, but it was delayed several times. In fact, on the last time when it finally did launch, it was delayed almost again. They had it on the pad and they had to stop the countdown, but then they started it up again and launched with only 2 seconds left on the clock in order to make their launch window. When they were done, the orbiter had finished, interestingly, 365 days in space, so 1 whole year in space. Leonardo, of course, is going to be spending a lot longer up there, but up until then, it had only gone up 8 times. Its 8th time is when they docked it permanently. 6 of those times were on Discovery, including this time when it went up here. The other 2 had been on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. And so we have, as you can see, another intercept from the surface straight to the station. So here we are slowing down. No, not slowing down. Speeding up. The station is going past us much faster than we're traveling right now, so we are going to speed up in order to intercept it. That injection stage there, actually it's not really even an injection stage, it was the original rocket. We're leaving that at a nice periapsis that will take it back and be destroyed, and then the injection stage, that Minotaur tug, we're going to use that to put it into place, and then later that will come back and burn up in Kerbin's atmosphere. We'll be docking soon, but first let's take a look into the past. Okay, so let me see if I can get this straight. So about 7 years ago, Kessler Kerman came up with a scientific instrument to measure and determine what was going on with these strange anomalies. He discovered a way to detect them. And that's what started them being interested in space exploration, because they detected some around Minmus. So Krantz Kerman is placed in charge of the commission that's going to do the exploration, and he asks his brother Joseph whether or not Joseph would be willing to lead things up, who at first Joseph says, or thinks to himself at least, yeah, that sounds great, but I want to think about it. And then the next day gets met by Krantz again, who I don't know what he's doing with the spacecraft yet. And then the same day, later on that same day, Krantz doesn't know anything about it, and he asks him whether or not he's going to be part of the commission. I'm starting to get completely confused. Let's take a look up at the station where we've docked the Leonardo, and I want to reorient myself toward the sun. Also, in a previous episode, I had used that robotic arm, and I never put it back. So we're going to move that back by just hitting all the zeros on the servo controls that will get everything back in place. And then Bob can go out on his EVA and pick off all those little bits that aren't going to be necessary, which is actually a little bit like what happened in the real case with the real ISS. Now this represents a high pressure tank that I probably should have brought up in a previous episode, but we're going to bring it up now and dock that up to the Quest airlock. It contains oxygen and nitrogen that helps keep them pressurized and replaces any lost atmosphere. Also in here, we have brought up the new SGant. This probably should have come up in a previous episode as well, but you know, when you're running low on time, you kind of cram things in where you can. So that SGant is going to go up on the Z1 truss on its little boom, but first we're going to grab an ammonia tank. This ammonia tank actually was another thing that I skipped in a previous episode. It turns out that this one is related in the real story to one of the longest spacewalks in history. It was on August 7th, 2010, when they had to do a bakeout because of a leak in the ammonia. A bakeout is when they go in the airlock and they just kind of hang out there, letting the ammonia kind of just evaporate away out into space, and then they check to make sure, using some special crystals that are inside that would change colors in the presence of ammonia, to make sure that they don't have any left and don't contaminate the inside of the station. So that was the longest ISS spacewalk and the 6th longest in history due to that problem. Now we have the antenna we're bringing up. First, I'm just going to put it down here on the Z1, not the correctly, but I need to go back and get the boom that it's going to go up on top of. I had to mod both of these parts because normally they're not grabbable, but I have, oh geez, Okay, well, I could have done a better job, I suppose, of making sure that when I made it grabbable that it actually went in a nice, interesting direction, like maybe away from him on his back, but I was only going to carry it for a short time and I'm never going to be carrying it ever again, so I'm not going to worry about it this time. It was just a little visual glitch. So now we'll take that SGant antenna. I'm not quite sure what we're going to point it at. In the real case, of course, it points to the ground. It's a space-to-ground antenna. But in our case, we don't really need another space-to-ground antenna because in remote tech, it only takes one. So we'll just get that lined up, and I didn't really like where it was lined up, so I'm going to reposition it one more time and just get it nice and perfectly lined up there, centered on top of that boom if I can. That looks pretty good now, I'd say. So why don't we head back down again? There's still some launch hardware on the Leonardo module. Just like in the real one, when they docked it up, there was some launch hardware that they took and they put into an HTV that then later got deorbited and destroyed. We're going to do something similar. At first, I'm moving these RCS jets just halfway down because it's easier than trying to carry them all the way down. I can just rotate around the outside of the Leonardo, sliding them down a little bit, and then we'll go down lower to where we have our Minotaur tug. We'll close all these doors as we're making our way around the outside, and then once we get down there, we can got a strut in there too. I don't really want to keep that up here forever, so we'll move that down. Once we get all that stuff halfway down, we'll move down there, we'll grab it all one more time, shift it down to the Minotaur tug, decouple that because it's on a little decoupler right in there, a little AIES, very narrow, you can just barely make it out, a little black decoupler, and then we will send that one home to be destroyed. After that, we're going to go and deal with bringing up our ELC. That is the Express Logistics Carrier. It's number 4, and we're going to be putting it over on the starboard side, on one of those 6 docking points where we can put those sorts of external cargo. Here we go with the decoupling. So a couple of the things that could have come up, I suppose, but didn't in my world, they did in our world, were a Dragon Eye laser for the SpaceX Corporation, because it won't be long now before we're going to see the very first Falcon 9 and Dragon launch. Also, the space shuttle brought up a couple Lego shuttles in honor of the educational partnership between NASA and Lego. And here we go on one of my favorite things in KSP. It is a deorbit of some sort of debris. In this case, our Minotaur. Oop, I guess I was going a little too steeply. We came in so fast that the heat just immediately vaporized everything rather than getting any kind of cool re-entry. It seems like there's a fairly narrow window where if I'm coming in too steeply, it just completely explodes in one big poof because of either G-forces or instantaneous heating. And if I come in too shallow, then I take off my velocity too slowly and I get re-entry effects, but I don't really seem to get a decent shockwave effect, and I don't get any kind of real overheating that destroys all the bits like a pop, 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 one by one sort of thing. All right, our ELC is making its way up there now. We are losing stage 1, and we are now taking off our fairing here any second. Come on, there you go. That exposes our ELC so that we can then letting our injection stage, or our original rocket there, making sure that that's nice and safely away before we release that interstage. Extend those solar panels and begin our transit over to the station. So the Leonardo, it was shown in a previous video, which means I'm not really going to do much to show this one. This was the Leonardo that I showed in a previous episode right here. It has the common berthing node up top, some RCS jets for stability down there, an injection stage on a decoupler, some lights all around the outside, and the inside is pretty much empty. I had the high pressure tank here on a strut, an ammonia tank that we put out on the P6, and the antenna, as well as the boom that it went on top of. The ELC-4, on the other hand, we are going to take a look at. It's up there under that 2.5 fairing. It has a normal old little tug injection stage, And then up here I have put down, this is supposed to be a radiator that pretty much took up the entire one side of the ELC-4. And then over on the other side there's just some extra gear that only an astronaut probably knows what any of it did. There is one thing that I did that's kind of interesting perhaps. If we take a little zoom in here, you can see that I had this on a decoupler that actually separated it from a top fuel tank. And if you'll notice right there, we have a fuel line. Well, where's that fuel line going? It actually goes down into the lower tank. Normally, you can't cross-feed fuel across a decoupler, but I used a trick that a buddy of mine from my World of Warcraft days told me I could try, and it worked perfectly in this situation. So the way it works is like this. Let's say you have something that doesn't normally allow cross-feed, or if you just want to have two tanks share their fuel. What you can do is take something like a strut and connect it in between the two tanks that you want to have hooked up. Then you put a pipe and you run it in between the two. Or if you were trying to do something like keep your fuel balanced, you can put another pipe here running up that way, and now with the pipes going in both directions, the fuel will balance itself between those two tanks until they're both empty. In my case, all I did was drain the one tank down into the other, like this, with the one-way pipe. But I wanted to get the decoupler in there, so here's where the trick comes in. When you take this tank away, and then take that strut away, you can put something like a decoupler in between. Even though there's no cross feed allowed, when I hook this up, that pipe is actually still connected from the one tank to the other, and so fuel will flow from here down into here. When I was up in orbit, I actually took a quick right-click peek on it just to see that it was empty when I looked at it up there, but it definitely was full down here when I loaded it up. Back in orbit here, we're at our apoapsis, and so I'm making a minor adjustment that'll allow me to come in a little bit closer to the station right there. And now I have my maneuver set up where I'm going to begin my burn, and I'm actually going to watch it from this external view for a change. I normally don't do this, but I'm going to begin my burn right about here, I think. And in just a couple seconds at this high-speed playback, we have matched velocities with the station, and there we are. Now, if you're an ISS lover, you can probably see that my ELC-4 already has all its orbital replacement units on it. That's just because it's welded together, and I didn't want to have to worry about future missions to bring up the things that really belonged on that. So now, let's go and take another look into the past.
Ja, det vet jag. Hela förresten med sällsamling. Här har vi låten. Ja, men det låten lite väset. Gå för vi vill se det. Se. Gå för. Först mitt.
Future? Well, I guess I probably should have seen that coming. It's sort of a cliche in these spatial temporal rift anomaly sorts of stories, isn't it? Somebody from the future comes through and changes things. I wonder what's going to happen, though. My guess is that Joseph was originally going to join the project, and somehow Kranz's influence on the past makes it where he doesn't. But I suppose we'll find more about that in the future, which of course means our future, not their future. Well, it's their future. I don't know what future it is. Oh, past, present, future. I know that in the present, we need to use the robotic arm and the electromagnet on that and hook ourselves up to this ELC's rocket, because again, we don't have any docking ports when I bring up the ELCs and stuff like that. So once we have that out there, Bob can go out on that EVA and grab it, and he's going to put it into place. Now when I go to grab this, ooh, that's a nice view right there. Look at that front of the station with all that stuff and all the stuff inside, and now with the ELCs on there, it's looking pretty cool. Anyway, when I go to grab this, it is heavy. I must have put some stuff on there that just really increased the mass. I'll bet it's that big probe case thing that I used that's supposed to be used for rovers, but I'm using it to represent the box and the radiator that were on that one side of the ELC, but it's really heavy. And so I'm moving super slow. It's burning through my EVA propellant just to get anywhere with this. I think I went through a whole unit of propellant just to get it down from the front of the station over to where I'm supposed to put it. And because I was moving so slow like this, I decide as soon as I get here, I'm just going to throw it on anywhere I can, because then I'll be able to move it. Whoa, geez, I got stuck inside. Well, when I let go of it, it I was in the wrong spot and my head was stuck inside. Anyway, I wanted to just hook it up as fast as possible so that I could maneuver better. And then I figured what I could do is I could rotate it. Once I had it in position, crooked the first time, I could just grab it again and rotate it, and it would be easier to attach it the second time than it would be to try and keep maneuvering while holding it and attaching it the first time. So now we're done, and we're going to head back into the KSS, and we can put that robotic arm back where it belongs this time, stow it away, turn off the electromagnet first, of course, and then move away gently and send this little stage back to Kerbal to be destroyed now that it has served its purpose. And that, my friends, is bringing this episode to a close and practically bringing the entire series to a close if I were only doing the legitimate ISS launches. There's only one more where we're going to launch the AMS and the ELC-3. I'll explain what the AMS is next time. However, that's not going to be the end of it for me. There were other launches scheduled, and I'm going to do some of those theoretical ones once we get further along with this, but we're really getting close to the end nonetheless. There's not that much more left to go. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do in my next series, and I have some really interesting plans. I think I'm going to really enjoy myself, and I will be showing it all to you and hoping that you get to enjoy it as much as I do. Until next time, I will see you later, Kerbonauts.